Hey team, Miss Winter here. So what I thought we'd be looking at today is how to create a digital version of a mixed media portrait. So the things that we're going to be doing are some minor editing, imaging kind of techniques. Then we're going to look at how to add film grain to an image to give it that kind of like nice nostalgic look. And then we're also going to add some light leaks to that. And then I'm going to show you how to include some different paint samples or mark making that you've done. So shall we get stuck into this? Let's do it. So I have taken some photos already in the Viscomp storeroom. I've used yours truly as a model. So I had my phone and all I did was blue tack it to a wall so that it would be in the exact same place for all of these photos. So I've got this photo of me looking very serious. I've got a side, another side, and then a little bit further back, I've got some solid side profile things. So I thought for this first image, what I'm going to do is I want there to be a fair bit of white space around me. So I actually think I'm going to use this last one. So what we're going to do is go open in Photoshop, but you've already made your contact sheet, no doubt, and you've got your stuff sorted. So I'm going to move myself over here. So you can already tell that it was taken on a phone. I actually did a video and then screenshotted these because I didn't want to have to keep walking over and pushing it. But I want to change the format of this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate my background layer by going Command J, or you can right click on the layer and go duplicate. And what I want to do first is I actually want to get rid of this like difference here between these two things. So there's a couple different ways that we can do that. We could do it using the Band-Aid tool. We could slowly, and if I click Option and click down, we could slowly start creating an alternate background like this. Alternatively, we can get the cloning stamp and do the same thing. So you press Option and you click down and you basically take part of that wall and you move it up to the top. Now, none of this is looking that good for me. So what I'm thinking I might do is actually resize it now, and then I can know what I have to edit later. So I don't want it to look super long like this. I want it to look more like a photograph. So I'm going to go Command A and Command C. Now that just means I've got a copy of this image that I can use. And now what I'm going to actually do is just crop it a little bit. So it looks a little bit more like a regular format photo. So I might crop it like that, image, crop. And now what I can actually do is go Command V, and it's going to paste in that image that I just copied from earlier. And I can kind of move myself around. Now I quite like that. I think that works quite well. Awesome. So now what I need to do is figure out how to kind of blend this thing into the background. So I'm going to duplicate this layer again, Command J, or I can right click on it and select duplicate. And this, I think maybe we'll use the Band-Aid tool for this. So I'm just going to click Option. So when I click Option, that little thing comes up and I'm going to click down and I'm just going to slowly and carefully. So basically I hold it down and click Option, and then click, and then I just keep doing it a little bit at a time so that it doesn't end up looking weird. It'll probably look weird a bit anyway, but that's all right. Here we go. Okay, so we're getting there. So I'm going to keep doing this until it almost blends. And I'm going to eventually turn this photo black and white, I think, anyway. So I don't need it to be like the whole way. And now what I'm going to do is click Option, and I'm just going to eventually keep getting rid of this line here. So it looks like I've been against, I should have done this against the green screen. Rookie. Okay. Now when that happens, so if I click on it and it ends up creating a mark like that, it just means I need to make this little stroke smaller. So I'm using my right and left brackets to make it smaller and larger. And then I'm just going to click on it again, and I'm just going to get a little bit more careful the closer I get to the head. All right, that looks good for this trial. Okay, so already it doesn't look like I'm in the Viscomp storeroom. It looks like I'm in a poorly painted room. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on adjustments, and I'm going to turn the saturation completely down. And so now you can actually see that you don't really notice so much that the wall is not completely white. So I've got the saturation. The saturation is completely down. And what I want to do now is really bump up the contrast. So because I want to have that like film grain look when I eventually put some grain on top of this, and when I also add some light leaks. So now I'm going to get my curves, and I'm just going to bump it up. And ooh, here we go. Look, I took it today, you can see. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Love this. So now what I want to be able to do is put something on top of it to give it a little bit of grain. So I'm going to click back on this layer, which is that top layer where I've removed. How crazy is this? If we look at this, that's the original, and that's how we've already edited it. Love this. So I'm going to click on this layer and I'm going to duplicate it again. I'm going to call this the grain layer. And so what I want to do here is I want to go filter and noise, or is it add noise? Yeah. So I want to add, I don't want to add that much noise, but I want to add a little bit of grain to this so that it has a little bit more of a, like, I guess, a painterly and kind of like more film-like quality to it. So I'll turn this on and off. So if you have a look, I'll zoom right in. That's what it's like on the iPhone. Because again, I took this on my iPhone. And then if I add a little bit of grain to it, it almost gives this feeling like it's almost like a recording, or it's being created in using film and processed and then developed. So I think that we really want this look for this image. So I'm going to hit OK. And so again, I'm going to zoom right in. That's the iPhone picture. And then if we show that again, that's how Photoshop's amazing. Okay, so I'm really happy with this. I'm actually going to save it as a Photoshop as I go so that we don't lose any of this. Happy with that. So what I've also got here, and we can do this with the trials, with the light leaks. We can't do it with the paint swatches, and I'll explain that in more detail in a moment. But with the light leaks, we can do this in the trials. And then we need to talk more about what you would do in your Unit 4 folio. But basically, I've taken some light leaks off of Google Image. So essentially, sometimes when you're taking film photographs, light will seep through certain parts of your camera and create what's called a light leak. Now, this can create a really interesting look. It also gives this look of a photograph that has aged over time. So you can use it a lot if you're doing things that kind of are trying to evoke multiple planes of existence, like dreams or like sleep or alternate realities. But it's also a good thing to do if you're doing things like memories, or you're trying to evoke a time from the past. So I think I'm going to try and use this one. So I'm going to open this in Photoshop and I'll show you how you can sort of utilize these in your work. So I'm Commanding A, so I'm selecting all, and then I'm Command C because I want to copy it. And then I'm going to go on top of the curve because I don't want this to be impacted by these two things. I want this to be its own thing. And then I'm going to go Command V. I'm pasting it in here. And now I'm actually going Command T because I want to like transform this. And so I'm actually just going to make it so that this color is on top like that. Now we can do a few things now because obviously you need to be able to see me underneath. We can multiply it, we can screen it, we can color dodge, we can do any of these things to get the look that we want, and you'll play around with whatever's going to be most appropriate for you. So if we go from the bottom up, so we've got like, this is one color. We can also do, I think usually these two, you kind of need color in it for it to work, but we can subtract, we can exclude, we can do all these different things. And so there's quite a lot that you can do in Photoshop. I think what we might do today is either soft light or screen, because multiply is quite dark. Screen, we're losing a little bit of me there, but maybe the soft light will be, yeah, that looks really nice actually. That's the way we want to go. Now I'm just going to turn it back to normal because as you can see, there are some dots on here that if this image was different, it could look really good and it could work, but I actually think it's just like distracting. So what I'm going to do is again, use my Band-Aid tool and I'm going to hold down Option and I'm just going to clean up some of these dots so that they're not as distracting. So all I'm doing is holding Option and then clicking over them. And this is something that you can do even with your own images. So say you have a camera, I've got a camera that has a sensor that has some marks on it. And so I need to get it cleaned. But in the meantime, what I can use until I get it cleaned is I can use this Band-Aid tool to clean up any marks that appear on it. And it's a pretty easy thing to do, but it's also just good to know how to do these things. Another thing that you can use this Band-Aid tool for is, say you're taking a photo of someone and they end up falling over and they have a little like scratch on their face, or they might have some kind of mark on their face or their arm or something that doesn't usually exist there. So I'm not really a big fan of getting rid of things that are part of a person, but if for some reason they've been playing footy and they've hurt themselves before they've had their photo shoot with you, you can use the Band-Aid tool to kind of remove anything that wouldn't usually be part of that person. So I'm going to, now that I've cleaned that up, if we do, was it soft light or screen? Soft light looks pretty nice, but so does screen. let's try screen for a moment. And I just want to show you some other things. So now that I've made that screen, you can kind of feel this like nostalgic feeling. Another thing you can do is turn down the opacity so that it doesn't feel so intense. So I'm going to turn the opacity right down to 50% like that. Cool. So I'm happy with this. This is what we're going to be working with. Again, just to show you. So we've gone from something like this to something like this, just using these simple tools in Photoshop. Now what I want to do, if we go back to this little list, how to include paint samples or mark making that you've created. So if you have got in your exploration proposal that you want to do some mixed media things, what you can do is on a piece of paper, you could do some different marks or make some different indications like this. So you might get a pen or you might get some ink and you might make some marks, and then you can scan it. Excuse me, I got so excited. You can scan it into the computer and actually use it in Photoshop to become part of your image. So I've just looked up some stuff online to use just for the purpose of this video since it's educational. But if I was doing this for my own art practice, I would be making my own marks. So with this one, you could do this with a Sharpie, you could do this with a brush, you could do this with some ink. We also have some different kinds of like color swatches that you could do as well. And we have supplies for this at school, so you could be even doing this in our classes. All right. So what I'm going to use for this first one is, I quite like this one. So we're going to use that, and I'm going to show you. So you're going to open that in Photoshop. And now what you're going to do is scroll in, and you are going to get this rectangle marquee tool, and you're just going to go around the part of your swatch, I guess, that you want. And then you're going to click Command C, and we're going to go into here and go Command V. Now we've pasted that in, and as you can see, we've got the swatch, but it's got lots of white space around it. So what you need to do to remove that is come over here and click on the magic wand tool, and then you select the white space around it, and you can either, I think it's edit and then cut, or the shortcut is also Command and then X, like that. And so you can actually scroll in, zoom in, and hold Shift down and select all these little white bits that you want to remove. And then you can press Command X, or you can go edit cut as well. So I'm just going to go through and do that. And then down here, there was a few little white bits too. Now, first of all, we've placed this on top of my face. I actually think this looks really cool. So if I was doing something in my trials about my identity, and maybe my identity is wrapped up in the art that I make or the painting that I do, then this could be a really good portrait, because this trial is showing that I am so obsessed with painting that it's part of my identity. It's more part of my identity than my own face. So like, these are all different trials you can do. Now, if we come back, let's get some more and put them in there together so I can show you how you can combine these. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click on this, Command C. We're going to come back into here, Command V. We're going to get the magic wand tool. The shortcut for that is just W. We're going to click on this and go Command X. And so we've got another paint swatch there. And then let's get the third one. So we're going to click on this. I'm going to select it all, Command C. Come back in here, Command V. Get the magic wand tool. Select what you want to get rid of, Command X. Or this looks amazing. How crazy is it? How cool this could look with just us placing stuff in there. So I guess it doesn't look amazing, but it looks pretty cool. So what you can do as well on these layers over here, you can click on the top one and hold Shift and select the very bottom one. And if you're interested to see what it would look like underneath, underneath that lens flare, or light leaks really, you can also click on that there, and look at that. That looks very, very interesting. However, if you want it to have the appearance of an old photograph that you've painted on top of, then you're going to click on this light leak image and pull it down to the bottom. So basically how Photoshop works is whatever's on the top is on the top, like the top of the pile. So you picture all these layers, you're like stacking on top of each other. So if I move this green one down here, it's now underneath that. So what I'm also just going to do is mess around with the like placement of these things. So you might be really happy with that, but you might also want to multiply them and make more of them. So I'm going to click on the top and hold Shift and select down here. And then I can right click and say duplicate layers. And I've just now made 3 more of those. So I might click on them and I could just move them down here. I can also right click on them and flip them horizontally, so it looks a little bit different, or I can start moving them around so that it starts to look a little bit more like an abstract painting being painted on top of my portrait. Do you see what I mean? I can also now just start moving these individually like this. Now I've hidden myself far too much, I think. So I don't know if this is necessarily that effective. But so I guess the positive of doing it this way is you can sort of trial quite a lot of things. You can also make the size of this smaller, but you can trial quite a lot of things from just creating a few different samples. You can trial things like this too. Now, another thing that I can do now that I've selected these, because these first three are normal, which means they're like a flat color, I can also apply these on top, but I can hold shift and select them and make them multiplied. So instead of them being like a solid color, they're actually opaque. Oh no, instead of being opaque, they're more transparent. So I can move them around as well. And it can create a completely different component to this. So I might now see how this one looks more like a watercolor effect. And so I can have that brushed down like that. I can alternatively move that underneath all of them so it looks like it's a mark that's been made already underneath it. So I can move this one down. Ooh, okay. Okay, I like this. And so see, you can sort of see areas where it could imitate the same shape. Oh, this looks cool. I'm really happy with this. So now what I'm interested in doing is potentially rearranging this a little bit so that the composition looks a little bit better. So if I want to move all of these things, what I need to do is click on the grain layer and click on this top layer here. And then I'm going to hit Command T. So this is going to transform the size of the image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this. And I'm just going to move this around until I'm happy with it. Ooh, I think that looks really cool. And I'm sort of centralized there. And I'm going to hit return. Love it. So I'm really happy with this now. So I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file, but then I'm also going to export it as a JPEG. And then this is what I would be analyzing for my trial. So I'm going to export that in my example too. And let's just check that that's there. Boom. Love this. All right, so we have done some minor edits in Photoshop. We've looked at how to add film grain. We've also added a light leak, and we've included some paint samples as well. So hopefully this has been helpful for anyone who's doing mixed media, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.